So hi, welcome to Woman at the Wheel. I'm Sue, and I am in South Texas. I'm on Highway 305, heading south to meet up with US 190 here in about 7 miles. And I just thought this scenery is really neat down here. A lot of mesas, and they even kind of look cool with the windmills on them, even though I don't really like windmills, but it kind of looks cool. Kind of a neat area I'm going through. In 7 more miles, I'll meet up with Highway 190. Must be climbing. Wow. Yeah. And then I've got a short jog over to Interstate 10, so I don't have too much left of this narrow little skinny road. So I thought I would kind of do a continuation on my theme the other day of the Carrington type event that shuts down the grid, destroys it basically, and gets rid of all our vehicles, our modern vehicles anyway, and kind of think about what would happen once we kind of got used to the idea. You know, look at it maybe like a couple weeks or a month after it happened. What are we doing to get by? This is just fascinating to me, and oddly enough, ironically, last night on Coast to Coast AM, they had an astronomer on there who was talking about some unusual sunspot activity and hoping that it wasn't going to be like a big solar flare, and if it was, that it would miss us. So you know, this is something that actual scientists worry about. So I thought I'd kind of continue the scenario, figuring on, you know, okay, I made it home because as you know in the last episode, Bill was able to come and get me up by Pocasset, and we gave some other people a ride back. So the first thing we did when we got back is we went around visiting everybody and seeing who had old vehicles that we could get running or that would run or whatever. And the problem is finding the points to replace if their points got fried. Well, it was kind of hit or miss. Some did, some didn't. As it turns out, the points in Bill's truck didn't get fried. We don't know why. But it fried everything else we have as far as vehicles. So they're basically, you know, not of use to us until we can figure out a way to either replace the motors in them with something that's not computer dependent or whatever. But for right now, they're basically just taking up space under the carports. So we've got one vehicle that will run, and it's a 1964 Chevy pickup. It's got Armstrong steering and 4 on the floor, and it's really tore up and ratty, but it will run. We can keep it running if we can get parts. So we kind of just go around for the first few days looking, A, for supplies, and B, trying to figure out who's got vehicles, who's willing and able to take those vehicles to try and find supplies, you know, if we have to go outside of our little area, because all of a sudden it's gotten to be kind of a big deal. You know, you don't want to go too far from home because getting back is iffy, getting out is iffy. You know, some places are kind of clogged in with cars and stuff, so some of the guys that have older tractors and stuff that survived are out moving cars off the roads. You know, they'll go as far as they can afford to go. Trying to get the roads open anyway, so anybody that's got vehicles can pass, even if it's just open in one lane, just to make them passable. The traffic jams are a thing of the past as far as, you know, getting stuck in one, unless you come upon one that was in progress whenever the event occurred and killed all the cars right there. So that's a lot of cars to move into cities and stuff. People in cities are having a hell of a time, but we don't really know too much about it. We get a little bit of word in from here and there when somebody comes through, somebody, you know, traveling, trying to get home or whatever still. And we don't really know it yet, but we're going to see people traveling for a long time yet, because a lot of people were stranded way far away from home. It's going to take them months to get there. So we're going to have months of people walking through just trying to get home, trying to figure out a way to get there. So what we've done is we've kind of gone around and got especially all the close neighbors in our neighborhood, because you know, the closer you are, you got to kind of try and help each other out, geographically speaking, because you're all in it together. So we're just trying to figure out what assets everybody's got left and how we can help each other and how we can all get through this until we can figure out what is going to be our new way of doing things. Because pretty clearly things aren't going back to the way they were. It's been, let's say it's been a month, and some of the people in the area have managed to keep their ham radios going, so we have a little bit of ham radio news. Very, very little, but some. So we're getting spotty reports from other places around the country, and even some reports from other countries where it's kind of skipping, the signal's skipping. And we're finding out that not everybody got hit by it, so it's not entirely the whole world. It's just parts of the world, and we're in one of the lucky parts that got it. Unfortunately, some of the countries that didn't get hit aren't inclined to be helping us any. So it's not like there's relief coming from very many of them, if any. And if there is any relief going, it's going to the ports, and it's only getting out to the people who are close enough to receive whatever is coming. So we're kind of on our own in the interior of the country here. And we know it, and it's like, well, we're just going to have to deal with it, because that's what we got to work with. So one of the first things we do is we kind of get together and have kind of an impromptu meeting of everybody that we can get to come see. We kind of take stock, see how everybody is, for one thing. See what kind of assets people have that are going to do anybody any good. And then how can we put them to use, and how can we pay each other, because we're not expecting anybody to just give us their assets and throw it in the pot for free, but we have to figure out some way to pay each other now that money's basically pretty much gotten to be to the point of being worthless, because there's nothing to buy. So we have to set up new systems. So we're basically falling back on the reliable old barter system. So the people that have vehicles and are willing to travel a little bit to hunt for supplies and stuff are doing that. We've got other people, farmers and ranchers around, that they've got livestock to protect, and because now we're going to have people coming out of the cities if they get that far out, and they might, shooting cattle and stuff to eat. So we're going to have to put people out guarding the cattle. So there's going to be a call for some actual cowboys again. So some people can make a living doing that, and being like a cowboy / security guard for these cattle herds and farms, things like that. There's going to be work for people on the farms, because we're going to be growing food again. We're not going to be growing much that's not going to feed humans for a while, because all of a sudden we've got basically nothing to eat. I can imagine we'd have probably different groups of people doing different things, and one of the things that some of them might be doing would be hunting. You know, maybe we'll have a group of hunters who go out and hunt deer or whatever, and, you know, try and provide meat around the community. So especially to the older people who can't get out, can't necessarily, you know, do the harder stuff. Probably have people fishing doing the same thing. But after a point, we're going to start depleting the wildlife, so we have to kind of regulate that a little bit, where we're not just going in and killing everything off. This is a super steep hill here. And I came into it from a dead stop, so I'm not surprised that the truck is actually working this time for this. Okay. 2 more miles to Interstate 10, I think. So now it's going to be a time when some of the older skills are going to be kind of handy to have. So we're going to be hitting the library, local library, looking for how-to books, because we don't have the internet anymore. We can't just pull up a recipe for how to make cheese out of cow's milk or something like that. We're going to have some other sources of information so we can figure out how to replace some of the stuff that we've lost. So dairies will come back into vogue, which I haven't seen a dairy in years. I think I've seen actually one that was a corporate dairy, but that was a long time ago, and that was the only one I've seen. It was pretty big, but used to be there was dairy every couple of miles. You know, there was a lot of milk production in this country. We're going to be getting back into that if people can get, you know, the milk cows to get the milk from. That's going to be an issue, because most of the cattle in our area are beef cattle. So we may have to send somebody out, you know, with a pickup truck with racks on it, go get some, you know, milk and cow stock, bring it in. So a lot of people are going to be doing a lot of different things. We're going to have different needs now. We're not going to have all this technological jobs. People are going to have to do hands-on stuff, gardening, growing food, preserving food. One of the things that we're going to be doing as a community is probably seeing how many canning jars we can come up with so we can put up food for the winter. And I imagine for a while it's going to be kind of a collective type of deal for each little community, where everybody puts all their stuff together and then they can up all the venison or whatever they can get all year round. And make sure that everybody's at least got, you know, subsistence level food, so they don't just starve to death and die off. That's pretty much going to be the main objective of everybody until we figure out what's going to happen down the road, you know, once this all gets sorted out or whatever. But the main thing is to stay healthy and keep everybody fed as much as we can. Ooh, a rest area. Oh, I think I'm going to stop, actually. And we'll continue this saga when I get back. Front row parking. Look at that. Can't complain about that. I'll be back. Okay, so I have 1.5, 2, 3.5, 4, 15. So 4 hours, 15 minutes of driving for the day so far. And I get 11 hours total. So 6 hours and 45 minutes is what I've got left. I'm doing better than I thought I was. $6:45. Okay. All right. So I'm all sad, of course, because I happened to have been in the Dodge the other day when all this happened. So this truck is still in the barn, and Bill just finished fixing it all up. And for some strange, freaky reason, we don't know why, it fried a couple of the computers in it, but it didn't fry the rest of them. So we're trying to figure out if these are essential or whatever. So we keep trying to start the thing, it won't start. But we lucked out, and one of the guys Bill knows is a retired Ford mechanic, and he's actually been pretty busy because everybody's trying to get their old Fords up and running that they've had sitting out in the pasture or in the barn or wherever. But he finally got him to come over and take a look at it. He says, I think I can bypass these and get you going. He said, but I am going to need points. And he says, let me check and see if I've got the parts. So it just so happens he's got the parts. So I was sad about not being able to drive it. Now I'm ecstatic because he's going to get it up and running again, which means we've got something we can actually haul supplies in that's roadworthy, that's going to allow us to go out a little farther than we would be going otherwise. Because I know that now it's going to run. So I got my red Ford back. My white Ford's dead. They don't think there's anything they can do for that unless they can find a non-computerized motor that they can switch it out and adapt to fit it. And a lot of people are doing that. They're trying to find old motors in vehicles where the vehicle's crapped out, but they can salvage the motor out of it and put it over in another car. So that, a lot of people are doing a lot of stuff like this. So the mechanics are super busy. Another bunch of people that are super busy is Ma Bell Telephone. Actually, the telephone guys have figured out that some of their underground wiring survived, and so there are spotty areas where they can actually work an old-fashioned telephone. It takes a little current to run a telephone, but they figured out how to do this in limited areas. So like it depends on where you're hooked up to with your original wiring. Now, a lot of people don't even have the wiring in their houses anymore because people haven't had landlines for a long time, but they're actually really busy going around trying to get people's landlines up and running. And an exciting thing about that is they've got a landline running into the police station that's actually operational. So they've got some emergency services back online to the extent that at least people can call for help if something's going on. And they've also got limited vehicles. So what the community did is we got together and found a couple of vehicles that we could fix up and donate to our emergency services. So if nothing else, we can get a paramedic to you. We may not be able to get you in an ambulance, but we can get a paramedic to you and load you in a car if something bad's happening. And we've got a couple of cars available for our police and county guys. A lot of the policing they're doing now, they're doing on horseback. Which, you know, it's a very practical but slow way to do it, but at least they're able to handle some stuff like that. They still have to report to the station to figure out where they need to go. So what they decided to do was just send guys out on patrol on horseback or on foot, and then keep the cars at the station for when an emergency call comes in. And the only emergencies they're answering right now are life and death type things. That's all they're using the cars for. So, I mean, services are limited, but there are some services. As far as the hospital and the doctor's offices, of course, most of their technology, most of their stuff runs on high technology, but the doctors have decided to just donate their time and, you know, take things in trade for people who have something to trade. And it's usually what they want is some kind of food. They're still trying to feed their families, which is understandable. So, you know, people are kind of getting together and doing that. Everybody who's got chickens is trying to get as many eggs as they can out of them. Obviously, there's still got to be chicken feed and stuff, so whoever has been able to go get any kind of supplies, they realized pretty quick that they were going to need chicken feed, so they went and got some. And they've just been doing it real sparingly and letting the chickens free range. I mean, there's no reason not to at this point. It's more economical. Feed them a little bit supplemental at night or whatever in the coop, but in the evenings, but turn them out and let them run all day. So there's a lot of that going on. So people are trading eggs, trading meat. The people that have cattle, of course, they're doing a brisk business in meats. And what they're doing is they're doing a daily type of thing where they'll, you know, they figure out how much meat they're going to have for the day off of this calf or that calf or yearling or whatever. And they've set up shop out in front of their places, so you have to get over there or send somebody over for you, and you just buy what they have, buy as much as you can cook and eat in a day or two. So we've got some rudimentary refrigeration back up and running, largely thanks to Bill, because a lot of these refrigerators can be set up, if you got the parts to do it, to run on propane instead of electricity. So what he's done is he's got everybody to go into their travel trailers and let him pull out their propane operated refrigerators and set them up in their houses for them. So there's some rudimentary refrigeration going on, which is a godsend to everybody. So, and these aren't very big refrigerators, but the people who have them, they're even keeping things cool for their neighbors. So it's kind of working out pretty good that way. So fortunately, even though our oven doesn't work anymore and the display on the stove is shot, it got fried in the deal. We can still light the burners and run the burners with a match. We light them with a match and just run the propane, and until we run out of propane. But we've got a lot of propane because we've got 2 propane tanks, so we've got enough propane to get us through probably several years, and all we're doing with it is cooking. one of the things we're doing is we're actually bringing in a little, I've got a cast iron stove that I bought, years and years ago. It's almost decorative, it's so tiny. It's no more than a 1.5 feet long and maybe 1 foot wide. We went around and found some chimney pipe, and we've set that up in the house so we have winter heat. And that little stove, amazingly enough, will heat the whole dang house. At least enough to keep you from freezing to death. It may not be super toasty, but what the heck? If we have to sleep in the living room in the winter at night to stay warm, that's fine too. We can just move the beds in there. I mean, why not? So one of the issues we had was sanitation, and we kind of cured that problem because a sanitation system like ours doesn't need electricity to work. It just needs water and gravity. So Bill cured the problem by hooking up a couple of pumps in the house. We've got one in the bathroom and one in the kitchen, so we can pump water. So we can pump water into a pail and flush the toilet. So we have flushing plumbing still. So that's really nice. We don't have to worry about, getting diseases or anything from, unsanitary conditions. And we can still actually, because this is the first time that anybody was happy about me having this tub. I've got this giant cast iron tub from 100 years ago. It's 120 years old now, or 130. And so I can draw the water and heat it on the stove. It takes a while. It takes a long time to heat it, but I got a couple of big, stew pots, big heavy stainless stew pots, and I heat my bath water in that. So I'll heat up as much hot water as I need and then just tone it down a little bit with some cool water. And I don't have to carry the cool water through the house because I've got the pump in the bathroom, so I can just add from that. So it works out pretty great. I mean, it's not as convenient as it used to be, the way things were. We had on-demand hot water, on-demand heater. Of course, it got fried because it was all computerized. But and it ran on propane, so it was kind of sad that the computer had to screw it. But Bill may figure out a fix for that eventually. Who knows? He's pretty smart. So anyway, we can stay, clean, just like always. We just have to work a little harder to do it. So that's fine. That's all working. So somebody decided that the grocery store in town was probably the best place to turn into a farmer's market. But to do that, we had to go in and kind of clear it out a little bit. Well, it wasn't really much clearing out because everything was pretty much gone out of there. But we had to make sure that there weren't any, scraps of meat or anything left back in the butcher area or any of that. So we went in and helped them clean. A few of us got together and went in and helped the store clean because, no water and stuff. There was stuff they couldn't clean up very easily. So we hauled some water down there and just cleaned it up real good so that the farmers could come in, the ones that had reliable transportation. Some of them you have to go to them, but the ones that could, they would bring their stuff in, and that was where we were having them bring it to. And that way we can have a all-seasons farmers market. And the grocery store owner was pretty happy with that arrangement because he gets groceries for letting them use it. So when they bring in the groceries, he gets X amount from each farmer. It's not like he's going to get rich off of it, but he can keep his family fed. So that he's pretty happy about that, and he's happy to be able to do something for the town. A lot of the older people in town, that's the nearest place for them to get any kind of supplies. So what we've done with a lot of the kids when they're not in school, because we do still have school, but we've kind of changed the curriculum up a little bit. But what we've been doing is on weekends we've been having the kids run around and help take care of the yards and houses of these older people in the community that are having trouble. I mean, because everything's down to rotary mowers now. You know, there are a few mowers around that are running, but nothing real great yet. So the kids have been a lot of help in that. They're kind of cheerfully going about it. It took them a little while to adjust to not having any technology, any electronics, but they're, you know, they figured it out. So as far as school, it didn't take us very long to just say, okay, well, we're going to have school, but we're going to have school the way that our community wants to have school, and to hell with all the national stuff. So we pretty quickly, we actually went and looked at every textbook that the school was using, and we decided amongst us, you know, what of this is actually relevant and what of it's actually, you know, kind of politicized BS. We didn't have a whole lot to weed out because our school system is pretty conservative anyway. There were a few things we decided to just take out of the curriculum and then put in some more helpful stuff, because we don't know when this is going to change, if it's going to change. So we want our kids to be prepared, and we kind of expanded the FFA and FHA so that kids learn to do, you know, the stuff that they're going to need to do to survive. You know, the animal husbandry and the farming and you know, running a household type of stuff that seemed so passé and old-fashioned, you know, before this happened, because nobody was staying home doing that much. But now that's a, you know, kind of serious stuff. So and it's co-ed classes. It's not like boys are getting FFA and the girls are getting FHA. Everybody's getting a good dose of all of it. We're not segregating by sex on who learns what. Everybody needs to know how to do everything, because we don't know what else is coming down the pike. It might get a lot worse before it gets any better. To come to some conclusion about what to do with the people who were in jail. And we had a couple of them in our county jail on some pretty serious stuff. So what we ended up doing was basically letting them out on a conditional release and kind of indenturing them instead of having them serve out there. So these are people who had been convicted. They weren't just being held, you know, waiting for the trial or whatever. They were convicted and waiting to go to the federal or to the state penitentiary system. So we decided, since there was no getting a hold of the state authorities or transferring them, because God only knows what shape the prisons are in, or if there's anybody even running them, we decided that we would indenture them out basically for the length of their sentence term. And amazingly enough, they were pretty happy to do that, and so far we haven't had any trouble with them. We did include the caveat that because of the severity of their crimes, if they started screwing up and going back to their old ways and, you know, assaulting and killing people, that we were just going to take them out and hang them. But that this was a stopgap solution for them, because we didn't want them to just sit in jail with no electricity, you know, and torture them. So this was their opportunity to, you know, get their shit together, or, you know, we just get rid of them. Because what do you do? So they agreed, and there were only 2 of them. And one had killed a guy and was supposed to be transferred out, of course, you know, the day before this all happened. And the other guy had just been convicted, and he was still waiting to see where he was going to end up going. They hadn't, like, sent him off or picked a prison to send him to yet. So he hadn't killed anybody, but he beat the hell out of somebody bad enough. It was like a serious assault. So he was definitely going to prison, just not for life. But they both got the same warning, you know. You start pulling this crap, then, you know, all bets are off. And so they agreed, and I would have agreed too in their shoes, I think, because, you know, what's the alternative? You sit in the bottom of the courthouse in a jail with no air conditioning, no heat, no water, no sewer, no nothing. I'm sure they would have probably, if we'd have decided to keep a jail running, which it just wasn't practical to do it, you know. But we also did admonish all the lesser criminals, you know, you get caught doing this stuff, it's going to be severe consequences. It's not going to be going to jail if you get our drift. We're not going to tolerate this, so you better keep your nose clean. So far everybody's been behaving themselves pretty well. We'll see how that goes, because, you know, some people are just stupid and never learn, and I'm sure we'll have to deal with it down the road. But we will probably end up having to build like a more humane type of jail to house people that just don't want to behave themselves. I can foresee that coming down the pike, because we can't put them back in the courthouse. That place is like toxic at this point. There's just nothing we can do with it. So I imagine we'll probably pick a building and then, you know, adapt it so that it's got bars on the windows, kind of like, you know, old-fashioned jails were. You know, fresh air, shelter, but nothing fancy. But that's kind of where we're at on that. So we haven't really come to that junction yet, because everybody's still in shock. Even the bad guys that were in jail are still kind of in shock over all this stuff. They're like, well, that kind of changes things, doesn't it? So that's kind of where we're at on that. So one of the other things that we did as a community, taking stock of assets wise, is we started talking to people about what kind of tools and equipment they have that are going to be useful in these circumstances that don't run on electricity or whatever. You know, that we can maybe pull together or something, so when somebody needs something, we can get something done. Maybe have somebody in charge of that. Well, we've got a guy in town who's like the tool guy, so he said, "Oh, I'll take charge of that." So why don't we see if we can get the lawnmower store in town to let us house everything in there. They got a lot of floor space and they got a lot of parts. And he says we can probably work out of there. And then if somebody needs something repaired and they can't find a tool or can't find a tool that'll work, they can come talk to me in there and we'll figure it out. So they worked all that out. Kind of the same thing, just bartering. People are bartering back and forth, you know. It's like, well, if you can do this, you know, I'll come cut hay for you, because I've got this antique hay cutter, and I can, you know, hitched up with the horses, and we can cut your hay. Stuff like that. I mean, people are trading what they have to trade as far as labor and skills, that kind of thing. We've got a couple of ladies in town who are like expert quilters, and they've started like making clothes for people and reinforcing clothes and mending and taking them in and stuff, because everybody's clothes are getting pretty loose because we're not fat anymore, for sure. All that time I was complaining about being fat, you know. I wish I had some of that fat back now. I'm starting to look a little scarecrowy, but it's good for me because I'm toughening up. I'm not soft and fat like I was. But our clothes are about falling off of us. Now I'm okay at taking in my own stuff, and I've got actually some other old clothes that I can kind of wear now. But for a lot of people, that's getting to be a real problem. So these ladies are kind of running a shop. They've got a couple of treadle sewing machines. And I've actually got a treadle sewing machine at home too. And Bill had to convert it back to treadle because it had been converted over to electric. But so there are several of us in the community who can sew. So if somebody's got something they need stitched up, well, they, you know, go talk to those ladies, or, you know, if you know your neighbor's got one. Everybody's being really cooperative. Of course, our biggest concern right now is the fact that it's so far into the year. I mean, it's already October, the end of October, and we're real concerned about having enough food to last us over the winter. So the saving grace in our area is we've got a lot of cattle ranchers. So we've got a lot of beef on the hoof that's going to be available to us as long as we can keep it secure. So we've got a lot of our younger guys that were doing different work like oil field and just various jobs, you know, construction and all that stuff. A lot of them have gone over to cowboying out here securing the cattle. And the cattlemen that they're working for, you know, they're paying them in beef, a lot of them, and so it's not like it used to be. Money doesn't mean squat. I mean, unless you can melt it down and make something useful out of it, you know, if it's, you know, metal money or whatever. But paper money, I mean, you might as well be lighting a fire with it right now. Of course, everybody's holding on to what they got, what little bit they got left. If nothing else, just as a keepsake, you know, pass on to their grandkids. You know, this is what we used to buy stuff with, you know, that kind of thing. But it's really pretty much worthless. It reminds me of how they talked about Confederate money being after the Civil War, that people were papering their walls with it to keep the drafts out. They had plenty of it, but it wasn't worth anything. So we kind of went on a reconnaissance mission, I guess, in the old Chevy. This was before they thought they could get the Ford running, so we didn't go real super far, but we tried to see how far we could actually get. And turns out we could get pretty decently far before we hit like a roadblock of cars, you know, where the road was just clogged up where you couldn't get through. And most of the places where we ran into trouble were like in towns, in bigger towns, like Lawton. You can't get through Lawton. You have to pick your way through there. You can't get through there on the main roads. There were a lot of cars when it happened. It was like, you know, rush hour. So that's pretty clogged up over there. So what they've been doing over in Lawton, from what I hear, is they've been getting all the guys they can get, and they've been pushing these cars out of the road, just pushing them over to the curbs and making a clear lane to get through. And I guess they've been having pretty good success with that. They're just sticking them in neutral and rolling them out of the way. Somebody over there also came up, they were saying, with the idea of salvaging parts off the cars. So there's a couple of guys over there, I guess they had some kind of a diesel shop or something, but they're going through and pulling whatever parts they can get off these things that might be useful to us later that didn't get cooked. So they're checking them out. And I guess they're having pretty good luck with that. And I don't know what they're going to do with them, because, you know, I don't know if they're going to get those particular kinds of cars running again, but maybe there's parts in there that they can use on other stuff. I don't know. But that's just what I heard. So I just thought it was kind of interesting, kind of, you know, enterprising of them, I guess. Then one of the things we've been doing around town here is we've been basically stockpiling fuel above ground wherever we can. So anybody who's got a fuel tank, we actually have an old fuel tank out back. We cleaned it out and got new hose on it and everything, because it's a gravity pump. It's a gravity fed pump, so you don't have to have electricity to pump out of it. We moved it up into the front of the yard where we can get to it real easy. We dragged it up there with the truck and set it up. And so we've been bringing in all the fuel we can find and loading it up. And we've got basically a problem, because we've got two kinds of fuel we need. We need diesel and we need gasoline, unleaded gas, or not unleaded, regular gas. Because the 64 runs on unleaded gasoline, regular, and then of course the red Ford runs on diesel. We get that up and running, we're going to need diesel. The good thing about the red truck is right now there's 100 gallons of diesel sitting in it because it's been sitting in the garage. So, and it's, you know, it's been out of the sun, but right before all this happened, we took it down and filled it up with diesel at Hilton. So if Bill's friend can get the part and get this thing started up and get it going, then we might be in business. So I should find out about that later this week. That's another thing about it. Everything's slowed way down. I mean, we don't think of things as like, well, I'll call you back. It's like, well, I'll see you next week when I'm back over this way. And it might be somebody who lives at the lake, you know, because it's a good hike. It's 5 or 6 miles to the lake. So, and the driving, you know, people are not out driving around every day because they don't want to have the hassle of hunting for fuel every day, so they go out about once a week on average. Now I'm thinking if and when we get the red truck running, I'm pretty confident about it. I'm pretty sure that he'll get it fixed. I'm just being real hopeful. I'm going to go back into the trucking business. I mean, I've still got my operating authority. Nothing's changed. I'm still legal. I don't know if there are any troopers around to give me any trouble about it, but I mean, nothing's changed on that front. They haven't like sent us down any edicts from high above because we haven't heard anything from the government. We've heard zero, nothing out of them. I think they're probably busy taking care of stuff right where they're at, and that's as far as they're thinking, because they're in the same boat we're in, all of them. So I'm thinking, you know, I might as well do it. Might as well make use of it. So I'm gonna do it a little different. I'm not gonna just go by myself because that's not safe anymore. So I'm gonna have a hired security to go with me, and we'll go get whatever we can get. You know, whatever we can trade for, or if we can find, you know, something that hasn't been picked clean already, then we'll go and see if we can bring back some actually useful supplies. And not necessarily food, because food's pretty much all gone. We're to the point now where we're having to feed ourselves, and that didn't take long. That was less than a month, because there just wasn't that much food on the shelves. And once this happened, unless there was a truck in town, to where we could get just a little bit more, and there were a couple of those around. Some people scored pretty good. Yeah, we're just down to having to take care of ourselves. So, but I've got this urge to get out there and figure out what we need. So what I've been doing is I've been getting a list from everybody. What do you need? You know, what kind of things are you looking for? So far on the list, I've got stuff like fan belts, belt driven. They're putting together their old stuff. Everything old is belt driven. So a variety of fan belts is high on the list. Containers, fuel containers, anything that'll hold anything in bulk is in high demand. Tools, building materials, nails, screws, nuts and bolts, all this stuff is in demand. So this is the kind of stuff I'm going to be looking for. And I'll probably take my great nephew with me as security. He's a cop, well, was a cop at Duncan. Before this all happened, they haven't put him back on yet, but he's so far away, he has trouble getting there. He lives out near us. So I think I'm going to see if he wants to come work with me. He's the best security I can think of. He shoots better than I do, which is saying something, because I'm pretty good. And he's not afraid. He has no fear. Well, maybe he's got a little fear, but he can work around it. He can operate through it. He's a good guy. So I'll probably take him as my security. And I might even let him drive some. But I'm not going to what I'm probably going to do is I'm probably going to go see if I can pick up a cargo trailer somewhere to put all this stuff in that we're going to find, because I can't really fit all that much just right on the back of the truck unless I build something back there like I don't know, some kind of a contraption to hold stuff in, like a shell of some kind. I don't really want to do that, because I think it's just a lot easier to back up to a trailer and hitch it up and off we go. At some point I'm going to have problems with tires, but I'm not going to be running high speed anyway, so that'll extend the life of my tires considerably. And I'm not going to be running huge distances, I don't think, because I just don't think there's going to be places I'm just not going to be able to get through, I believe. Any big city, I think, is going to be like a giant roadblock. So we'll see how that goes. But I'm really anxious to find out, you know, if the truck's going to survive and be useful to us, because that would be a hell of an asset to have. And it runs on diesel, so I can get diesel just about anywhere. There's a lot of diesel sitting out there that nobody's using because all the semi-trucks got fried. Well, all the newer ones anyway. You know, almost all of them. I think I've heard of a few that survived it that were like 70s Peterbilts and stuff. A couple of Macs, but there's just really not much left in the way of big trucks. So I'll probably just get a nice cargo trailer, something that we can secure, and then we'll just, you know, go see what we can find. So one of the things we've been finding out is that a lot of stuff that you would think would be like really coveted, people have just walked away and left it because the companies that own it just, you know, they can't get paid anymore. So a lot of people just walked off and left these places, and there's, you know, it's just sitting there. So we'll have to go figure out who's actually in charge of it, because I imagine by now they probably, some smart guy in each town where this stuff is has probably decided, okay, I'm going to be the keeper of this stuff and I'll dole it out and make a little money on it, or make a living on it. So I imagine that we'll have to be, you know, dealing with some people bartering. So I'm going to be bringing stuff with us that we can trade. And I don't know what that's going to be yet, but whatever we got locally that we can spare, you know, I'll bring some of that along to trade. And it might be that some of the guys, maybe, you know, closer into the cities, maybe they're still taking cash because they might have more resources where they're, you know, they got people willing to take it. I don't know, but we'll get plenty of that anyway, just in case it actually turns out to be worth something, which I'm skeptical. I don't know. Not sure what I think about that. Man, this road, getting back to the present, this road is steeper than shit. I've been going uphill for the last 20 miles. So I must be climbing up out of the desert. I guess maybe up onto the Edwards Plateau. I think maybe. We might be here now. Might have just made it all the way up. Okay, sorry for that modern commentary in the middle of my story. So anyway, I'm looking at that. You know, Bill has figured out a way to possibly get the medicine he needs. He talked to the doctors down here, and one of them had some contacts. So we might be able to work that out. We might be able to get that medicine. He takes a shot every month to keep his tumors from growing. The treatment he had shrunk them all down, but he has to have this other stuff to keep them from regrowing. So that's kind of an issue. So this doctor we went and talked to, He said he thinks he can probably get this. He doesn't know that he can get it every month, but he thinks he can get some of it. And if he does, you know, he'll put Bill at the top of the list, because he's like the only guy in our area that's got this particular cancer that it works on. So that part is looking hopeful. Before that, we were a little worried. We're worried, but we're not extremely worried because it's such a slow-growing cancer. But we don't have any idea how fast it would grow back if it, you know, if it resurges or whatever. So we're still worried, a little worried about it. Not liking the idea, put it that way. So that was kind of a top order of business for him to try and find some source for that. So the doc he talked to is actually the local doctor here in town. And he's never had to deal with that, but he's heard of it, and he knows some people, and he thinks he can probably come up with something. So we'll see what happens. I mean, it's just like everybody else. We're taking things one day at a time. It's like all the meds that we're on. Everybody's on, you know, everybody's got this med or that med. Well, some of us, it's actually been good for us physically to lose all the weight we had. It's ironic that it's cured a lot of our problems that, you know, we thought we didn't know what was causing them, but turns out a lot of our problems were from our diet and from, you know, our weight. So in my case, that's kind of cured my high blood pressure problem. I found my manual blood pressure cuff when I got home. I actually have one of those tucked away. I never could figure out how to use it before. I suck at doing that, but Bill's real good at it. So he was able to check it, and now for, you know, since I quit eating sugar and quit eating grain altogether, because there's not much to be had. And I've dropped about 30 pounds actually, which is really good. I don't want to drop too much more, but you know, but I've dropped about 30 pounds just adjusting, I think, to, you know, not eating much, because there's not much to eat. We're rationing everything because we don't know how long, you know, this winter is going to be, and we're trying to make it through. So since I dropped that weight, I have no problems with my blood pressure or anything. So, and I've got some other medicine that I take occasionally, but I've got a lot of it, so I'm not worried about that. I kind of got it stockpiled. I started just saving it because I wasn't taking it very often, but I had a kind of prescription that kept getting refilled, so I just kept getting it and then putting it away in my closet, basically. So I have plenty of that in the event that I need it. So that all worked out really good. And the stuff that Bill's been on, he's noticed his blood sugar's leveled out a lot. He's not having the problems with that, because that's one of the effects of the medicine he takes, the shots he's been getting. Well, since he quit getting his shots, his blood sugar's leveled out. That and his diet has changed also. He's not drinking soda anymore. We ran out of soda and stuff like the first week. That was about as long as that lasted. So now we're drinking water mostly, and I make a little bit of coffee now and then. I'm afraid to make very much because I'm afraid we'll just completely run out. And so that's one of the things I'm going to be looking for when we go out of town, and see if I can find a stash of coffee somewhere. There's a lot of people who would give their arm and leg for a can of coffee. I can tell you that right now. So, but anyway, that's kind of how it is, you know, just from my perspective. A month after this whole Carrington event type thing, and I don't even know what they're calling it. We haven't gotten any news in from anywhere with any really definitive information. We've heard little bits and pieces, like it didn't get the whole Earth, it did this, did that. Well, but for us, I mean, it's just basically isolated at least this part of the United States. We don't know how far it goes out east. We know it goes clear to California because we had some guy come through here not too long ago in a really old roadster. I don't know how he got as far as he did, but he came from California. He said everything's dead out there, so he, as far as the electrical grid and all that, he said, so he thought he'd go east and see how far he could make it. And he picked up this roadster not too far from here. He said he came out the first part of his trip, he was on a motorcycle. He had no motorcycle at home. So he ran that until he came across this old roadster. He said, he said, I probably should have kept the motorcycle, but this was such a cool car. He just found it sitting parked on the street, so I don't know what happened to the owner of it. Who knows? I guess I don't know. Who knows? So anyway, he came through with that, but he said, as far as the West Coast, there's nothing. So we don't know how far east this affected everything, but we do know that everything out that way is shot too. So it's a big chunk of the country. I would suspect probably Canada took a hit too, and Mexico. We haven't been hearing anything from Mexico lately. Nothing in the news, what news we've been getting, so I don't know. I think they're in the same shape we're in. They're not traveling very far from there. Surely there are people, if it hit them too, they're coming up and checking things out. And if it didn't hit them, you would expect to see more people coming up, I don't know. It's just kind of a big question mark right now. But it's only been a month, and, we're back to horse and buggy days here, kind of in a way. Not totally, because we have some technology we could salvage that didn't get fried, but the majority of it is just gone. I mean, I sit here and I look at my laptop computer, and I just bought that thing a few months ago. Kind of pisses me off, because I had an old one and it was okay, but it was getting ready to die on me, so I thought, I probably ought to just get a new one. Could have saved my money. Of course, it doesn't matter now anyway, because money doesn't mean anything anymore, but it might again someday. I don't know. It's just, everything's unknown. It's the big unknown. So anyway, that's where we're at, about a month into it, and I'll update you when we learn more. Maybe in the next week or two, I'll find out if that red Ford's going to run, and if it does, I'm going to see what I can find to bring back, see what we can go trade for, and see how far we can get. So that's going to be another thing. Eventually somebody's going to have to go out and look, see how far this goes. Right now I don't think it's very safe, because I'm afraid what I'm going to find out is that people in cities are in really desperate straits, because they don't have, they're not surrounded by cows on farms like we are where we're at. So we're really lucky where we're at. But, I don't know. I hate to think what the cities are like right now. It can't be good. But maybe we'll hear something one of these days. I don't know. Mostly everybody's just staying the hell away from them right now. I mean, Lawton is the biggest town near us, and nobody's really going over there voluntarily right now. We had a couple guys go over earlier, and they came back and said, yeah, they're moving these cars off the road, and there's a guy over there taking parts off cars and hoping they'll be, helpful somehow or whatever. But other than that, we really don't know much about what's going on over there. So, but we haven't had much trouble over here as far as, people showing up trying to take anything. So that's kind of good. At first we thought that was going to be the first thing that would happen, with just, lawlessness would just break out and everybody be stealing everything that wasn't tied down. Well, it hadn't been that way, surprisingly. I think we're far enough from the cities that it's too long of a walk for them to get to us easily. Even from Lawton, that's, a couple days of walk to Lawton if you're walking. But I imagine what's going on is probably in the cities. I'm just guessing here because I have no idea. And me and Bill were talking about it. He said he kind of thought that there'd be like little gang wards or whatever going around and getting all the vehicles they could find that would run, and then just running around and, raising hell in the cities. And that could be. It's kind of a scary thought. you know, I don't want them coming out here and raising hell. But then again, we're ready for them if they do. I mean, it's harder to find us now in the dark, for one thing, because we don't have, you know, yard lights. we're down to. I got a collection of old oil lamps, and I've never been so glad to have something in my life as that. And I actually had 2 bottles of lamp oil. So in the evenings, we can run the lamp for a while. We don't have to just go to bed with the sun. So we can sit and read or whatever. And, you know, it's not like watching TV, which probably is a good thing, actually. Now that I've been weaned off the TV for a month, I don't know if I'd go back to that, because it kills your imagination, you know. It's like when you read a book, you're transported. But when you watch TV, you're amused or entertained or whatever. Sorry. So anyway, that's kind of where we're at. I'll check back in with you here in another month or two if we survive it that long, and let you know what's going on. In the meantime, I think I'll go back to reality here for a minute, back to the real world. Look at this terrain around here with these rock walls and stuff. I came through here from the other direction a couple months ago, and thought this was kind of neat looking up in here. It's just kind of different looking terrain. Okay, so I think that's the end of my story for now. Thanks for riding along and playing along, and I'll talk to you later.